Hi, welcome to the small shed. This Saturday I'm going to church for the first time in years. See you in a minute. Now, I frequently get sucked into things that I shouldn't really be doing, and this is a typical example, but it's turned out to be quite interesting anyway. One of the ladies stood up at the gardening club a few weeks ago and asked if there was anyone could help put right some raised beds on a little allotment plot she had in the middle of Droitwich, which I was slightly puzzled by as a position, if you like. And she said she got some old pallets that she wanted, she might be able to break up and use, but as usual with these things, I was sort of gently nudged by people that knew what I was doing and what the connections were with men in sheds. So I went and had a word with her afterwards, and it turns out that there is a small plot in the middle of a plot of ground at the back of a church in the middle of Droitwich, which I knew nothing about, and it's quite an interesting little haven of tranquility. So let's go and have a look and see what the job is and see what we can do to put it right. So the church stands at the end of the high street, and you may notice that it hasn't got much of a tower. Parts of this church go back to Norman times, so it's been established quite a while, but unfortunately the pumping of brine from Droitwich has meant that the high street, which used to be level on that level, you can see it in the distance, it's just all dropped away from pumping brine. And as a result of the instability, the church itself had the top of the tower taken down in the 1920s because it was getting to be unsafe. But at the back of the church, right on the high street, something I never really had noticed is a little pathway through to a gate leading through to an area at the back of the church. And I went and visited it with my wife earlier in the year when the weather wasn't so good, and found this little patch of ground that's just right in the middle, but quite peaceful and quiet. And in that corner of that, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but there are actually about half a dozen little allotment beds. And we went and had a look and could see that all the surrounding timbers that were holding the raised beds together had pretty much rotted. So there was a bit of a job to do, and I didn't really think that the two pallets that she got on the back of the wall there were going to be enough to put them right. So we had a bit of a wander around to get a feel of the place, because it's somewhere we'd never actually been. And then I went off to go and sort some wood. But it was interesting, there's a little, like a maze there that they've got in the grass that just exists there. Somebody's been looking after it. I don't know how long it's been there or what its purpose is. It's all really strange to find something like that that's not really any public access to. I think they can get access to it from the church. There's like a community area with a coffee place and things like that, so it may be that it's like a garden for that, but it's an odd little area. So I went and had a chat with the guys down in Bromsgrove that we get our large bits of timber from at Men in Sheds, and scrounged a few lengths of the 3.5 by 3 timber, because I thought that would be a little bit more substantial. I mean, whatever we put in is going to rot over time because the ground is obviously wet, and I wasn't going to spend a huge amount of time in waterproofing stuff and getting it treated and all that sort of thing. There is some black rubber on these things when they're delivered, and so I've left some of that on to try and keep the moisture out a bit, but I think really I'm just relying on the bulk of the material itself to give us a reasonable amount of longevity, certainly better than the bits of 3x2 that they'd got in before. And then I just set about putting right the corner posts. There are some metal corner brackets with holes for screws in, but they'd all got fallen at angles, odd angles over time, as these beds have failed and, you know, the ground pressure has pushed them out, and it's put them all at slightly odd angles. So I got the sledgehammer out, gave them a good smack and got them somewhere near upright, and then started to take stock of what I'd got to see what could be salvaged, because I hadn't got enough material to do the whole lot, and to be quite honest, I hadn't got the time to do the whole lot. Problems with this were that to get anywhere near close with the car, I'd got to park on the high street, and that gave me about 20 minutes, I think, or 45 minutes I think I've got to unload and do a bit of work, and then either go and park somewhere else or come back another day. So I was tending to do it in little sections of, you know, half an hour or so at a time, but we just roughly got an idea of what was sound and what wasn't, and in the end I think I'd got just about enough timber to put the beds back so that they were at least usable. I think this originally started out in about April, when there wasn't much in the beds at all. They were just starting to get things growing into life, so it was the ideal time really to catch them before there was a lot of things in the allotment beds. I think this is a few days later. They've obviously done a bit more work on the allotments themselves, but I've gone back up again and started to do some work. What was annoying really is that the beds were 8 foot long, which was great for the timbers because they were 8 foot long, but they were about 4'6" wide, something like that, 4'9". So it meant that I couldn't just cut one of the large pieces in half to do the two ends, so it was quite wasteful in some ways with the timber. But I've used the offcuts, I've taken them back down to the men in shed's shed, and we're using them on other projects, so it's not totally wasted, but it's just a shame that I was having to hump all the timber around just to get that little bit of waste, or quite a lot of waste. You can see the timber's just crumbling in your hand almost as you try and get it apart, and of course all the screws were rusted in and rusty, so they wouldn't unscrew, so it was a bit more of a brute force and ignorance job to get them out. As ever, the trusty Irwin pull saw has been the saviour with this one. It really is a useful bit of kit for this sort of job, because you can fold the thing up into a fairly small length, pop it in the car, but it'll do a hefty job like cutting that timber without any great problem. This is a few days later when I've made a start on things and started to fix them a bit. Right, that's cut most of the bad timbers out. There's still a couple more to replace. I've got one more length up here, and I think I've got 2 or 3 at home to make some further ones. But what I need to do now is cut some blocks to go in the corners, which I'll use some of the spare offcuts that I've got, and then we can come back and screw it all together, and hopefully we'll have something that lasts a few more years. And then moving on a couple of days later again, weather's starting to pick up a bit more, and I'm back working on the timbers, cutting some more to length, getting them fixed in, and in this instance really enjoying the sunshine and the well, it was late spring by then I think, weather, but again it was just brought home to me how quiet and peaceful it was when it's right 50 yards off the high street in Droitwich. corners were just stuck together with the large 5-inch decking screws I'd got, or 6, I think they're probably nearer 6-inch, but one or two of those in the corners would soon push it together and hold it upright, and then I put some smaller screws through the metal in the corners to hold it all together to the pegs in the corners. And I think it was at this point that I started to get a helper along to give me a hand working on the project, which proved to be more of a distraction than a help, I think. Some of the things are starting to sprout in the allotment beds now. So we're a bit later on. This took place over a period of a couple of weeks or more. And as I say, my little mate came along, who'd been running around every time I did any work. He came along and helped out, eating the worms. One of those little things that makes it all a pleasant job, if you like. It's just nice to have a bit of wildlife when you're working, just to come and peck at things that close to you. Needless to say, I didn't get much work done that day. And so that's pretty much it, I think. Right, that's got the beds repaired, nice and solid now, so that we can at least let them get on and get their crop planting going on. It looks like there's already stuff starting to grow, but they've now got back to their 6 beds that are pretty much solid around the edges, although in time I suspect some of them, like that one, are still going to disintegrate further, but we're limited on the amount of wood I've got at the moment. All I need to do now is get rid of all the rubbish that I've made. Right, so that's another little job ticked off. That was at the time when I got too many things on at the same time, and that didn't help matters, but it was nice to be able to just get out and have a little bit of peace and tranquility in the middle of quite a busy little town, and find that little spot that I've never even noticed before in, what, nearly 50 years in Droitwich. So you live and learn every day. Hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next time. We'll be doing something different. I'll see you then. Bye.